Hello, welcome to our first vocabulary video on the Book 6 Unit 2 vocabulary. In this video, we are going to introduce the words as they are presented on your vocabulary sheet, talk about the word form, so whether it's presented as an adjective, verb, or noun, and then talk a little bit about the meaning of the words, how they're used in sentences, and whether they have a positive or negative connotation. Okay, let's start with the first word. A diagnosis. Pronunciation, diagnosis. Diagnosis. A diagnosis. A diagnosis is a noun. It means an identification of what illness a person has. So, can we put that in a sentence? Well, the doctor made a diagnosis. The patient had cancer. That makes sense because the doctor, by doing a diagnosis, identified an illness called cancer. Who does a diagnosis? Well, usually a doctor does a diagnosis. Who gets a diagnosis? Well, usually a patient gets a diagnosis. And what is a diagnosis for? Well, a diagnosis is for identifying an illness. So we do a diagnosis to identify an illness. Try and put this word diagnosis in a sentence. The next word is hardship. Pronunciation, hardship. Hardship. Let's say that faster. Hardship. Hardship is a noun. It means something that makes your life difficult. Can we put that in a sentence? Well, many people suffer economic hardships. They don't have enough money. This homeless man in this picture is hungry. So he may be suffering economic hardship. He does not have enough money to pay for a home and to buy food. Do you think a hardship is a positive word or a negative word? Good, it's negative. This is something we do not want to experience. Try and put this word hardship in a sentence. The next word is a misconception. Let's slow that down. Misconception. Misconception. Let's say it faster. Misconception. Misconception is a noun. It's an idea that is wrong or untrue, but that people still believe. So, can we put that in a sentence? Well, one of the common misconceptions about money is that all people love it. So why does that make sense? Well, lots of people believe that all people would love to have money. But that's simply not true. Some rich people are very unhappy and wish that they had lived another life. So that would be an example of a common misconception. Some other common misconceptions might be that you can see the Great Wall of China from the moon. So, some people believe that if you were to go to the moon as an astronaut and look down on Earth, you could see the Great Wall of China. That's not true. No astronaut who has gone to the moon has ever been able to make out the Great Wall of China. But still, lots of people believe it to be true. And it's a misconception. Another misconception is that Mount Everest is the tallest mountain in the world. Technically, that is not true. There is a taller mountain, but it starts below sea level. So even though it doesn't reach as high or as closer to the sky as Mount Everest, technically it's taller. Can you put this word misconception in a sentence? The next word is abandon. Abandon. One more time. Abandon. Abandon is a verb. It means to leave someone or something behind. How could we put that in a sentence? Well, you should never abandon the people you love. That sentence means you should never leave the people you love behind. Can we put it in another sentence? Yes. The man felt abandoned by society. The man felt abandoned by society. Notice there I'm using abandon as a feeling. So the man felt abandoned. He felt left behind by society. In that sentence, I'm using abandon as an adjective. I can also use abandon as as a noun by adding an ment on the end and turning abandon into abandonment. So many children feel a sense of abandonment. Do you think abandon is a positive or negative word? It's a negative word. It's something that we don't like to do or we don't like to witness happen. Can you put this word abandon in a sentence? The next word is able-bodied. One more time. Able-bodied. Let's say it a bit quicker. Able-bodied. Able-bodied is an adjective. It means fit, strong, and not disabled. So if you're able to use your body, you are able-bodied. How could we put that in a sentence? Well, most athletes are able-bodied. They can use their bodies to do amazing things. That makes sense because lots of athletes are fit, strong, and most of them are not disabled. So they can use their bodies to do amazing things. Can we put it in another sentence? Well, the old man isn't able-bodied anymore. He needs help doing everything. So as we get older, our bodies become less able-bodied. We are less fit and we are not as strong. And we are not able to use our body in the same way as younger people. Do you think able-bodied is a positive word or a negative word? Able-bodied is a positive word. We all like to feel fit and strong. So, can you put the word able-bodied in a sentence? The next word is accountable. 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 Accountable is an adjective. It means being responsible to another person or having someone else have power over you. So, how could we put that in a sentence? Well, we could say parents are held accountable for their children's behavior. That's another way of saying parents are responsible for their children's behavior. We could also say the boss is accountable for his employees. If they make a mistake, it is his responsibility to fix it. So another way, in another way of saying that, is the boss is responsible for the mistakes that his employees make. Try and put this word accountable in a sentence. Our next word is an obstacle. Obstacle. One more time. Obstacle. Obstacle is a noun. It means a thing that blocks one's way or prevents or hinders progress. So, how would we put that in a sentence? Well, you could say, the obstacle was in my way, so I had to go around it. So here, for example, in this picture, we see an obstacle. It's in the way, so the arrow has to go around it. If you were not able to go around it, it's clear that the obstacle would stop your progress. Another way of using obstacle in a sentence is you have to overcome many obstacles to succeed. This basically means that the path to success has lots of things that might get in your way, and you have to find a way to overcome them or get around them to be successful. An obstacle can be a physical object, or it can be an idea, something we conceive. So, for example, poverty can be an obstacle. Try and put this word obstacle in a sentence. Before moving on, do you think obstacle is a positive word or a negative word? An obstacle is a negative word. We don't like to experience or encounter obstacles. This next word or set of words is an expression. It's also a form of noun. It's another level. Let's say that again. Another level. Another level. Another level means the improvement or development of something that is already successful. So if you reach another level, you are building on something you are already good at. One way of thinking about this is in computer games, where you progress from one level to another level. How would we use this in a sentence? Well, you could say, I'm good at English, but yesterday I reached another level. I got 20 out of 20 on all my tests. Notice here that the person was already good at English. But how did they reach another level? Well, by getting 20 out of 20 on all of their tests. So they made an improvement or development of something that they were already successful at. In this case, English. Do you think reaching another level is a positive thing or a negative thing? Reaching another level is often a positive thing because it's an improvement or a development of something that you are already successful at. The next word is average. One more time. Average. Average. Average is an adjective. It means having qualities that are typical of most people or things. In other words, average means ordinary. So here, we've got a rating system: good, average, and bad. Notice that average is in the middle because this is the ordinary level. How would we put average in a sentence? Well, the average man spends a lot of time watching sport. The average woman spends a lot of time shopping. These are qualities which are typical for most people. So, most men spend time watching sport. It doesn't mean every man spends time watching sport. It just means that's a typical quality of men. Can you put this word average in a sentence? The next word is awareness. Awareness. One more time. Awareness. Awareness is a noun. It means consciousness or seeing what's going on around you. How would we use that in a sentence? Well, you could say you need to show an awareness of what's happening around you. That's just another way of saying you need to be conscious of what's happening around you. You need to be able to see and understand what's happening around you. Self awareness is really just being aware of who you are, knowing who you are as a person. Do you think awareness is a positive or negative word? Awareness is usually a positive word. In fact, it's always a positive word. It's a trait we like to have. Can you put this word awareness in a sentence? The next word is curious. One more time. Curious. Curious. Curious is an adjective. It means inquisitive. Or, no, or another way of thinking about curious means that you are interested in something. So, how would we put that in a sentence? Well, you could say, I am curious about Ireland. Can you tell me more about it? This is a good way of showing what curious means, because if you're curious about Ireland, you want to find out more information about the country. So it makes sense that you would say, can you tell me more about it? Can you think of anything you are curious about? Hopefully, you've thought of things that you are interested in learning more about. Can you put this word curious in a sentence? The next word is defeated. 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 Defeated is an adjective. It means beaten or overcome by. Do you think defeated is a positive word or a negative word? It's a negative word. This face over here looks defeated. And as you can see by the sad facial expression, it does not appear to be a positive experience. How would we use defeated in a sentence? Well, you could say, I was defeated by the English test. I gave up halfway through. That basically means you were beaten by the English test. It was too difficult for you. You gave up. So you were defeated by it. How else could you use it? Well, you could say, after losing the game, my team felt defeated. Notice here that in this other sentence, I'm using defeated as a feeling. So we can feel defeated. We can feel beaten by something. Can you put this word defeated in a sentence? The next word is devastated. One more time. Devastated. Devastated. Devastated is an adjective. It means extremely sad or shocked. Notice that it means extremely sad or shocked. That's because devastated is a much stronger word than sad. It's extremely sad. Well, how could we put that in a sentence? You could say, I was devastated when my father died. The mother was devastated when her child went missing. These are experiences that would make us extremely sad or shocked. So it makes sense that we would feel devastated after them. Before moving on, do you think devastated is a positive word or a negative word? Devastated is a negative word. Nobody wants to feel devastated. Can you put this word in a sentence? The next word is exalted. One more time. Exalted. Exalted is an adjective. It means held in high regard, placed at a high level, or noble. Well, how would we put that in a sentence? Well, we could say the king is an exalted person. That makes perfect sense because the king is held in high regard, placed at a high level, and noble. You could also use the word in a different way. You could say that the family treated me like royalty. They gave me such an exalted welcome. That means that the welcome they gave you was very noble. They treated you like royalty. Do you think exalted is a positive or negative word? Exalted is a positive word. How would you use exalted in a sentence? Give it a try before moving on to the next slide. The next word is free. Free. One more time. Free. Free is an adjective. It means able to act or be done as one wishes. How would we put that in a sentence? Well, you could say, I am free to do what I want. That basically means you are able to act in a way that you want. How would you put it in another sentence? The most important thing in life is to be free. So in that sentence, what you're basically saying is the most important thing in life is to be able to act or do things that you wish. Can we put it in another sentence? Well, you could say children aren't free, they have to do what they're told. That makes sense because children are not able to act in a way that they want. They have to do what they're told by their parents. Do you think free is a positive word or a negative word? Free is a positive word. It's something most people like to feel. Try and put this word free in a sentence. Our next word is give up. Give up. One more time. Give up. Give up is a verb, it's a phrasal verb, and it's also used as an expression. It means to stop doing something because it is difficult. How would we use that in a sentence? Well, if you give up at the start, you will never succeed. This makes sense because if you stop doing something at the start, you won't be able to finish it. You could also put it in another sentence. The runner gave up. He didn't finish the race. That would mean that the runner stopped running because he found it too difficult, and therefore he didn't finish the race. You could also say it's difficult not to give up in life. So it's difficult not to give up in life. So usually, many of us, we want to progress through life, but it's difficult at some stage not to give up, to stop trying to progress, because it becomes more and more difficult to get more successful and more successful and more successful. So usually most of us reach a point where we're happy with, and then we give up. Can you use this word give up in a sentence? Good. Before moving on, notice how you use that word in a sentence. Do you think this is a positive or a negative phrase? Give up is usually negative. It's something we don't like to see other people do, and we don't like to do ourselves. This collection of words reads go far beyond. One more time. Go far beyond. Go far beyond. Go far beyond can be treated like a verb or an expression. It means to exceed the expected, usual boundary or limit. So, you can imagine that this would be the limit of our town, and the railway track is going far beyond. It's going beyond the limit. How would we put this in a sentence? Well, we could say, the roads out of town go far beyond where most of us have been. That basically means that the roads out of town go further away than most people in the town have traveled. How else could you put it in a sentence? You could say, I went far beyond what was needed. That means you did more than what was needed. You exceeded the expected usual boundary of what was needed. Try and put this expression, go far beyond, in a sentence. The next word is hopelessness. One more time. Hopelessness. Let's say that a little bit quicker. Hopelessness. Hopelessness is a noun. It means being without hope. How would you use that in a sentence? Well, you could say, some people live a life of hopelessness. They don't believe in a better future. That basically means their life is without hope. They don't believe they can have a better future. Thinking about hopelessness and thinking about how it's used in that sentence, do you think this is a positive word or a negative word? Hopelessness is a negative word. Nobody wants to live with a sense of hopelessness. Do you think this person in the picture might be experiencing hopelessness? Yeah, the person in this picture looks very upset. They've got their hands over their face, and it looks like they are experiencing a state of no hope. So this is a good image of somebody who might be experiencing hopelessness. Can you put hopelessness in a sentence? The next word is humiliated. Humiliated. One more time. Humiliated. Notice that the H is silent. It's never humiliated. It's just humiliated. Humiliated is an adjective. It means embarrassed or mortified. For anybody wondering what mortified means, mortified is just a strong word for embarrassed. How would you put that in a sentence? Well, you could say, I was humiliated by my friend when she told everyone I needed to lose weight. So your friend might have embarrassed you because she told other people you know that she thinks you have to lose weight. That's an embarrassing feeling, so you might feel humiliated by your friend. How else might you feel humiliated? Well, if you had to do a presentation, for example, you might say, I didn't say one word correctly in my 30-second presentation. Afterwards, I felt humiliated. So you can imagine standing in front of the class, giving the presentation, but saying every word incorrectly. If you said every word incorrectly for 30 seconds, you might feel embarrassed. So you'd feel humiliated. Do you think humiliated is a positive word or a negative word? It's a negative word. Nobody wants to feel humiliated. Now that we've talked about what it means, try and put this word in a sentence. The next word is inquisitive. Inquisitive. One more time. Inquisitive. Inquisitive is an adjective. It means having or showing an interest in learning things. It's got a synonym that we've already encountered, and the synonym is curious. Curious and inquisitive have a similar meaning. How would we put inquisitive in a sentence? Well, you could say, it's good to be inquisitive. You learn lots of new things. This makes sense because if you're inquisitive, you are showing an interest in things, and therefore you are learning about them. What do you think inquisitive people are like? Do you think they are bored by new topics? Probably not. They are interested in new topics. Do you think they are quiet and never ask questions? No, inquisitive people ask lots of questions. In fact, we could put that in a sentence. Inquisitive people ask lots of questions. Try and put this word inquisitive in a sentence. The next word is inspiring. 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 Inspiring is an adjective. It means causing someone to want to do something. How would we put that in a sentence? Well, you could say, I find Lionel Messi inspiring. He makes me want to be a better footballer. Why does that work? Well, if you find Lionel Messi inspiring, he wants you to, or he is making you want to be better at football. So he is inspiring you because he is causing you to want to be better at football. That's basically the something you want to do better. How else could we put inspiring in a sentence? Well, we could say he was an inspiring leader. I would follow him anywhere. So when you experience somebody who's inspiring, you want to follow them. You want to support their cause, or you kind of want to do what they do. Before using this word in a sentence, can you think of someone who is inspiring? Maybe it's a family member. Maybe it's a friend. Or maybe it's somebody famous. Now that you've done that, try and put this word inspiring in a sentence. Try and think of why that person might be inspiring. What is the thing that you want to do better because of that person? The next word is keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going is usually an expression. It means to give hope and encouragement. How would we use that in a sentence? Well, you could say, I told him to keep going and to never give up. One more time. I told him to keep going and to never give up. When you told him to keep going in the sentence, you were offering hope and encouragement. So that makes sense. You could also say, the supporters shouted, keep going at the team. That makes sense because the supporters want to give their team hope and encouragement. As you can see, keep going is sometimes used in a sentence as a verb. So we can change this keep to the past. So he kept going, or my mother is keeping me going. That in that sentence I'm using it in the present continuous. But it's commonly used as an expression in its own. So you can shout to somebody when you support them and want them to continue, keep going, keep going. It's okay to use it as a single expression. Try and put this expression, keep going, in a sentence. Try and think of why you might shout this at somebody, or in what situation you might use this expression. The next word is laborious. Laborious. One more time. Laborious. Laborious is an adjective. It basically means difficult. It sometimes has a slightly different meaning to that, where it kind of means difficult and boring, or difficult and tedious. So, how would we put that in a sentence? Well, you could say building a house can be very laborious. It takes a lot of hard work. You could say working in a mine is very laborious. This basically means that working in a mine is a difficult job where you do the same thing every day. To use a more relevant sentence for students in the PYD, you could say studying every evening can be laborious. You have to give yourself time to relax. Do you think laborious is a positive word or a negative word? It's negative. We don't like to do laborious things. Try and put this word laborious in a sentence. The next verb or expression, here presented as make something cool, basically means to make something seem fashionable, look cool, attractive, or interesting. It's a very informal expression. So you could say, I made him look cool in front of my friends by saying he played 20 musical instruments. So, in this sense, you're making him interesting by saying he plays 20 musical instruments. So people will find this person interesting, they'll want to know what instruments he plays, they'll be wanting to know how good he is at each instrument. and people will ask him lots of questions. You could also use it in a different way by saying, "That jacket makes you look cool." What does that expression mean? Well, it means that jacket makes you look fashionable. So if you see somebody wearing a cool jacket, you could say, you could turn around to them and say, "That jacket makes you look cool." Can you put this expression, make something cool, in a sentence? The next word is meager. One more time. Meager. Meager. Meager is an adjective. It means poor or sparse. Some of you might realize that sparse is a really complicated word. Sparse basically means not a lot of. So when we think of meager, we also would find it useful if we thought of not a lot of. So I could say there is a meager amount of food on the table. Think about that sentence. There is a meager amount of food on the table. Does that mean there is a lot of food on the table? Or does it mean there is not a lot of food on the table? Good. It means there is not a lot of food on the table. When you have a meager amount, it means not a lot of. So if we look here, this would be an example of there being a meager amount of food. You can also use meager in a different way. You can say, "I come from a meager background." This basically means you come from a poor background where there wasn't a lot of things. So there was no flashy cars, there was no brand new computers, there was no new iPhones. It was a background where you didn't have a lot of stuff and you were poor. Try and put this word meager in a sentence. Now that you've done that, think about this word meager. Is it positive or negative? Good. Meager is a negative word. The next word is misery. One more time. Misery. And again, misery. Misery is a noun. It means a great sadness. So, here we have children going through, or I think they're going through some sort of immigration process because they're all in this or behind these bars. They appear to be in some sort of cage. So if I was to ask a question about this, I could say, do you think these children are experiencing happiness or misery? Well, that's a pretty easy question. They're not experiencing happiness, and they're probably experiencing great sadness. Children don't want to be packed up in a cage like this. How else could we put misery in a sentence? Well, we could say there is too much misery in the world. That just that basically means there is too much great sadness in the world. Think about the sort of things that might cause misery. Well, poverty might cause misery. Abandonment might cause misery. Coming from a meager background might cause misery. And hopelessness might cause misery. How could we put this in another sentence? Well, good people try to help all children escape a life of misery. Now that we've talked a lot about misery in sentences, how do you think this word what do you think this word connotes? Is it a positive word or a negative word? It's a negative word. Okay, try and put this word misery in a sentence. Good. Before we move on, notice that this word misery is a noun. So even though you can say, I feel misery, just like you can say, I feel happiness, I feel noun, do not say, I am misery. The adjective for misery is miserable. This next word, or amount of words, is open someone's eyes. So open someone's eyes. Open someone's eyes is a verb or expression. It means to cause someone to notice or be aware of something important. So, you could say, failing a test made me open my eyes. I need to study much harder. So, here, when you failed a test, you became aware of something important. That important thing was that you needed to study harder, so you would be able to pass future tests. So failing that test made you open your eyes because it made you aware of something important. Another example would be to say, she made me open my eyes to the harm I was causing. So in this sentence, open my eyes to the harm I was causing basically means making you aware of the harm you are causing. So somebody might not be aware that they are causing harm, then somebody opens their eyes, and then they do become aware. Notice here that the someone, while it could be a name of a person, will often be a possessive pronoun, such as open your eyes, open his eyes, open my eyes, open their eyes. It could also be a name, it could be open Ali's eyes. Or opened Ali's eyes. Try and put this expression, open someone's eyes, in a sentence. The next word is persevere. Persevere. One more time. Persevere. Persevere is a verb. It's captured nicely with this meme, never give up. That's because it means to continue trying to do something difficult in a determined way. So if you're climbing a mountain and you're finding it difficult, you might have to persevere. So by persevering, you keep going. You don't give up. How else would we put this in a sentence? Well, you could say you need to be able to persevere if you are going to finish that marathon. Remember, a marathon is a very long running race. And of course, at certain points in the race, you're going to get tired and want to give up, but you have to keep going. You have to keep going in a determined way. So, in other words, you have to persevere. If you're climbing a mountain or have climbed a mountain and are telling somebody about your experience, you might say it was tough, but I persevered and reached the top of the mountain. These are examples of how you can use persevere as a verb. Of course, one other way you can use persevere is as an adjective. So you can show perseverance. You can show perseverance. You can show perseverance. Actually, sorry, that's not an adjective. That's a noun, to show perseverance. Perseverance is a noun. One more time, let me correct that. Perseverance is a noun, so you show perseverance or have perseverance. And that basically means that you have the quality of not giving up. Try and put this word persevere in a sentence. The next word is poverty. 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 Poverty is a noun. It means having little money or few material things. So, how would we put that in a sentence? Well, you could say, I come from a life of poverty. That means that when you were growing up, you had very little money or few material things. So you didn't have enough money to buy the material things. How else could we put it in a sentence? Well, we could say preventing poverty is one of the world's major challenges. And this is true. Up there with trying to prevent global warming is trying to prevent poverty. Nobody likes poverty. Nobody likes the idea that people come from backgrounds where they don't have money. So, keeping that in mind, do you think poverty is a positive word or a negative word? Good, it's a negative word. People who come from poverty are poor. They don't have a lot of money. As a result of having a lot of money, they sometimes struggle to buy basic things, such as food or shelter, for example, a house. Try and think of some countries where poverty is a serious issue. Now that you've done that, try and put poverty in a sentence. The next word is pride. Pride. One more time. Pride. Pride is a noun. It means feeling pleasure and satisfaction because of your achievements. So you could say, I felt pride when I aced all my tests. Or you could say, I experienced pride When the teacher said I was the best student in the class. This makes sense because you would feel pleasure and satisfaction if you managed to ace all of your tests. You'd also feel pleasure and satisfaction if the teacher told you you were one of the best in the class or the best in the class. Do you think pride is a positive feeling or a negative feeling? Pride is a positive feeling. We all like to feel it. Notice here that pride is being used as a noun. How would we use this as an adjective? Well, some of you might have come across prideful at this stage, and that is a correct word, but a more common expression is proud. So, I am proud of my accomplishments. Try and put this word pride in a sentence. This next collection of words is push the boundaries. Push the boundaries. One more time, push the boundaries. Here we have a nice little image showing what this is like. You have to imagine that these walls are the boundaries, and notice how the person is pushing them across. Push the boundaries is a verb or an expression. So, it means to exceed limits or overcome obstacles. How would we use that in a sentence? Well, you could say you need to push the boundaries if you want to be very successful in life. That basically means you need to overcome obstacles if you want to be very successful in life. Try and think of this word push the boundaries. How might you use it in a sentence? Try and put that in a sentence now. Push the boundaries. The next collection of words is reach a high point. Reach a high point. One more time. Reach a high point. Reach a high point again is an expression that we sometimes treat as a verb simply because it begins with the verb. It means to experience the most exciting part of an event. So here in our lovely little image, you can see that this is a great example of somebody reaching a high point. Why is this the most exciting part of the event? Well, climbing the ladder isn't too exciting. Going up the stairs isn't too exciting. But look at what they get to do on top. They get to use a bow and arrow. So not only is this ironically the highest place, but it's also where the person gets to do the most exciting part. Use the bow and arrow. How would we use that in real life? Well, you could say the high point of my career was being awarded Manager of the Year. Here, you're using reach a high point to explain the most exciting part of a career. So, The most exciting part wasn't just working your way up to being a manager. It wasn't being a manager. It was being a manager of the year. That was the highest point or the best point that was reached. So, how else could you put that in a sentence? Well, you could say the high point of my student life was being accepted into Oxford. That makes sense because Oxford is a world-class university. And that could and being accepted into Oxford could be the most exciting part of your student life. Being at Oxford is probably a whole lot less exciting because you have to do a lot of the hard work. But being accepted before you actually begin that work would probably be a real high point. Now that you've thought about this expression reach a high point, see if you can use it in a sentence. Good. Do you think this expression was positive or negative? Good. Reach a high point is positive. If we want to turn this expression into a negative, we change the word high to low. So you can reach a low point, and that would be a negative. So that would be to experience the most disappointing part of an event or experience. Okay, let's move on. So this next collection of words reads reach deep down. Let's slow that down. Reach deep down. One more time. Reach deep down. Reach deep down is another expression that means to try very hard to accomplish something. How would we put that in a sentence? Well, you could say Batman reached deep down into himself to find the strength to beat the Joker. One more time. Batman reached deep down into himself to find the strength to beat the Joker. Try and put this expression reach deep down in a sentence. Our next expression is reach new heights. Reach new heights. One more time. Reach new heights. Reach new heights is an expression that means to improve or succeed more. So because these are new heights, you are going higher than you've ever gone before. How would we put this in a sentence? Well, you could say, I'm sure my career will reach new heights. I am only just beginning. That's good because when you're using reach new heights in that sentence, you are saying that you're sure your career will improve and become more successful, or in other words, just get better, because you're only just beginning. So if you're starting as a medical student and your career starts as a junior doctor, soon you'll just become a doctor, then a senior doctor, then maybe I'm not sure what the equivalent of a manager for doctors is. Managerial doctor. I'm not sure. But you will potentially reach new heights. As your career gets longer and longer and longer, you will improve and become more successful. Maybe a senior partner in your own surgery. That's probably a good example. Okay, how else could you use reach new heights? Well, you could say, I've climbed many mountains, but I will reach new heights by climbing Everest. So, I've climbed many mountains, but I will reach new heights by climbing Everest. Here you are improving on what you've already climbed. So, the highest mountain and the biggest mountain is Everest, and you will reach new heights. You will improve on what you've done by climbing Everest. Try and use this expression, reach new heights, in a sentence. Do you think this is a positive expression or a negative expression? Reach new heights is usually used in a positive way. However, with some creative English, you can turn it into um, a negative expression. So you could say, for example, he reached new heights in bad behavior. But usually it's used in a positive way. The next word is rebound. Rebound. One more time, rebound. Rebound is a verb. It basically means to recover or bounce back from. So here in the picture, you can see the stock market is falling in numbers. All of those red numbers mean that they are going down. So it's losing value. But here you could say the stock market will rebound. The numbers are low now, but they will get higher. That just means the stock market will recover. Right now, the value of stocks is going down, but the value will go back up. So the value of the stocks will recover. In other words, they will rebound. What else might you rebound from? Think about what you might recover from. Well, you can recover from an illness. So can you rebound from it? Yes, you can. You could say the man rebounded from his illness. He is fitter now than he's ever been. That just means he's recovered from his illness and he's back to being fit again. Try and put this verb rebound in a sentence. This next word is self-reliance. Self-reliance. One more time, self-reliance. Self-reliance is a noun. It means independence. How would we put this in a sentence? Well, you could say self-reliance is an important skill in university. Why does that make sense? Well, it's because independence is an important skill in university. Ultimately, You have to be able to study by yourself, and you have to be able to succeed at the tests that you take by yourself. So you need to show some level of independence to be successful at university. Or in other words, you need to show self-reliance to be successful at university. How else could you use self-reliance in a sentence? Well, you could say, I don't have much self-reliance. I can't do anything on my own. That makes sense, because if you're not able to do anything on your own, you're not showing independence. Or in other words, you're not showing self-reliance. So, self-reliance, a synonym for self-reliance is independence, and it basically means being able to do things on your own. Do you think self-reliance is a good word or a negative word? Self-reliance is usually a positive trait, so we would consider it positive. This is the noun form, but can you think of the adjective form of self-reliance? Good. You get rid of that CE and you put in a T, and it becomes self-reliant. So you could say, I am self-reliant. That basically means I am independent. I rely on myself. This next word is shame. 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 Shame is a noun. It means embarrassment. How would you put that in a sentence? Well, I felt great shame when I lied to my teacher about doing my homework. He knew I wasn't telling the truth. So here you were feeling embarrassment, great shame about lying to your teacher when you told your teacher you did your homework. But the teacher knew you weren't telling the truth, so you felt embarrassed. Shame is usually something we feel when we feel that others are judging us, usually in a negative way. So if you did something wrong and people are kind of judging you in a negative way, then you will probably feel shame. Shame is slightly different to guilt. We feel guilt when people aren't judging us, but we just feel bad about what we did. But we feel shame when we think people are judging us. And that's why we are showing embarrassment. Another example of using shame in a sentence might be something like, many criminals feel shame for what they've done. That basically means that the criminals are embarrassed about what they have done. This makes sense because they're labeled criminals and they have been judged by society. If they feel embarrassed about the wrong thing they've done and wish it didn't happen, then they are probably showing the feeling of shame. Try and put this word shame in a sentence. Before moving on, can you think of an adjective form of this word? Well, you could come up with something like shameful. So it was a shameful act. But you could also say, I was ashamed. I was ashamed. This next word is stereotypical. One more time, stereotypical. Stereotypical is an adjective. It means a widely held, but sometimes incorrect opinion. So, we could look at these pictures. These are stereotypical princesses. So, you could say the stereotypical princess is always pretty. But we know this isn't always true. It's possible to sometimes have a princess that isn't considered pretty. It's a widely held belief that the princess is always pretty. And that's why Disney will often portray a pretty princess. You could also go for something else. You could say the stereotypical American is loud and opinionated. This basically means that the stereotypical view of Americans, the widely held view of Americans, is that they have lots of opinions and aren't afraid to share them. But this is only a stereotype. In many cases, it's probably incorrect. There are plenty of Americans who are not loud and who are not opinionated. Try and put this word stereotypical in a sentence. The next word is struggle. One more time, struggle. Struggle is a verb. It means to have difficulty handling or dealing with something. How would we put that in a sentence? Well, we could say, you'll struggle to do well in the test if you don't study. That basically means you will have difficulty succeeding in the test if you don't study. Why does that make sense? Well, because you have to study to do well in the test. If you don't study, you will find it difficult. In other words, you will struggle. How else could we put this word in a sentence? Well, we could say, lots of people struggle to escape poverty. How does that make sense? Well, is escaping poverty easy or difficult? It's difficult. And that's why people might have difficulty handling or dealing with it. And that's why lots of people struggle to escape poverty. Do you think this word struggle is a positive or negative word? It's negative. Nobody likes to struggle. Try and put this word struggle in a sentence. This is it. This is it. One more time. This is it. This is it is an expression. It means it is now, the time, or it is happening. It's a standalone expression, which means it can be put in a sentence all on its own. So, if you were leaving home, like this child, you could say, "This is it. It's time to leave home forever." That basically means now is the time. It's time to leave home forever. Hopefully, this child didn't leave home forever, and this is not a backpack to go to Canada. Hopefully, he's just going to school. But you can still use that expression. You could say, "This is it. It's time to go to school." That basically means now is the time. It's time to go to school. We often use this expression, "this is it," when something is about to begin, something new, or when something we've been kind of eager to finish or excited to finish finally comes to an end. So, you might hear your teacher say in your very last class, "This is it. This is our last class." That basically means now is the time. Our last class is today. Try and put this expression, "this is it," in a sentence. But follow that sentence with something that corresponds with "this is it." In other words, think of a reason or a time where you would use this expression, "this is it." The next word is transition. Transition. One more time. Transition. Transition is an adjective. It means to change. Now, it's not used in a lot of contexts where we use change, but it still means to change. So we have to be careful about the context where we use it. A good way of thinking about transition is to change over time. Instead of just changing, to change over time. So, you don't transition from one piece of clothing to another piece of clothing. You don't transition through a pair of shoes when you're changing your shoes. No, a transition is more a change that will happen over time. So you could say Saudi Arabia will transition from an oil-based economy to a green economy. That basically means that over time, a change will take place in Saudi Arabia where their economy is based on oil to an economy which is based on environmentally friendly concepts. Try and use this word transition in a sentence. Hopefully you came up with something like, "I will transition from a student into a professional." That makes sense because that change will take a little bit of time. Make sure you don't use transition in the same way you use change unless it's taking place over some period of time. So if you change direction in a car, you're not transitioning. You're not transitioning direction. The next word is yearn for, or the next couple of words is yearn for. One more time, yearn for. Yearn for. Yearn for is a verb. It's a phrasal verb. And it means to strongly desire or want. To strongly desire or want. So when you yearn for something, it's not just that you want it, it's that you strongly want it. How would you use that in a sentence? Well, you could say, the man was lost in a desert and yearned for water. So, if the man is lost in the desert and he doesn't have food, he doesn't know where to get water, and he's getting thirstier and thirstier, and the sun is pouring down on him, then he is dying to drink some water. So he is yearning for water. He has a strong desire for it. He really wants it. He wants to be able to kill his thirst. So he's yearning for water. You could say many young people yearn for a better life. So that would mean that many young people really want a better life. Try and put this verb yearn for in a sentence. Now that you've done that, you've reached the end of this video. Well done for making it all the way through. Remember, a lot of these words have different word forms. So they can be used as different parts of speech with just a few adjustments to the word. Make sure you know that as you progress in the PYD. At this level, it's important that you start thinking about all of these words and how they can be used as nouns, verbs, or adjectives. It's also very important that you think about synonyms for each of these words. This video has given you a solid foundation to build on, but it's important that you build on it. That's something you're going to have to do in your own time, and I wish you luck at it.